Hi everyone. So if Jesus was coming today, how will you be able to capture this story in just a single design? Design is not just about just adding images, adding everything together. It's about making together your elements to communicate a particular message. So in this end time design, we're going to be taking a look on how we can be able to capture this in this end time flyer. So without wasting much of our time, let's jump right into the tutorial. All right, so before we get started, I would just like us to take a preview on the design we are making together. So just a basic analysis on the things you are seeing here and how everything relates to what we are going to be designing. One thing you have to know that if we are making a design, every visuals, every image, every color, every position matters a lot. So for our design, we are working with the Bible verse, Revelation chapter 1, verse 7, and it says, "Behold, he cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him, and all kindreds of the earth shall wail because of him. Even so, amen." So first thing that you take note of this design is the red background. So second thing is the perspective of the buildings, which we have here, and then this. And then thirdly is you see the glowing figure here, which is Jesus Christ at the center here. Matthew chapter 24 verse 30, it says, "And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory." Every decision that was taken in the design has meaning. So number one is the cross shape that you can see. So if you look at, if I hide my, let me just hide this and create a new layer so you can be able to see what I want to draw out again. If you see, this shape is the shape of the cross. So you can see this shape here. And Christ is placed at the center. So all these things have a meaning. For instance, the cross shape, the tall buildings frame the sky into a cross. And then Christ is at the center, which Jesus is glowing at the heart of that cross, showing he is both the crucified Savior and the coming King. So, and then we have the surrounding building, which represents nations, reminding us that every eye shall see him. So those are the symbolism in the design together that make this whole. So when you're making a design, you have to first think about what do you want to communicate and what are you trying to, pass across. So when we are creating this perspective of the building, meaning that we want people to be able to, when you look at the design, your attention is drawn towards the image at the center, which is Jesus Christ at the center of the cross. And then you can be able to now say, okay, oh, all eyes shall see him, so that, you can be able to capture the essence of that. So that is initially what you can see here. So we're going to be moving right into how you can be able to now put all these things together right from scratch, and then you can be able to see how this was created. So I started off with a base color of red, and then I added a layer above it. So the aim is to be able to visualize the structure of my building, not fully the structure, just outline on the positioning of how I want the building to be positioned on the design. So that's where you see me, just drawing out the shape of the building, and then how it's going to create the cross. So I am focused on, I want the cross to be at the center of the design. So that's what you see me doing here. So I just want form out the whole essence, the shape, the buildings. I want just as we mentioned earlier, the building, you should be able to see the building and look as though you are looking up, and then the building as well is forming the cross. So that is what I'm doing here. So once I put together this line art, so what I did next was to find references of buildings that are captured in such perspective, because you have to know what you want and know how you can be able to find such images. So I was looking out for structures. I was looking out for building structures that seems as though the camera was, tilted up. The perspective is as what I wanted. So once I got a perspective which I wanted, I used Pinterest to find the building structure. So once I had that, what I did next was to use an AI platform. So I initially used an Nano Banana. So I had the building structure and then I just put that into Nano Banana to create a structure for me that is going to capture the perspective of the reference I provided. Maybe in one of these tutorials, I'm going to cover, using AI extensively. So what I'm doing here now is just to have, just draw out Jesus, just a image. So just a silhouette to just show Jesus at the center of the cross. So just a shape. So then once I got what I wanted, so I did the image generations on Nano Banana, and once I had my results, I also made it to be culture. So I also made it to be relevance to Nigerian setting, so that you can be able to relate with it easily. So I not just generated anyhow. So you can see the image here. So what I did next was to just remove the background and then start taking them bit by bit, separating them from one another, so I can be able to position the buildings to what I wanted. So once I separated each one of them, I did the first, second, and then the third. And then once I was done, so the plan is just to take them to the illustration, which we already did. So, and one thing that I even noticed in the building is that you notice the water tank, you notice some other little things that is you can be able to relate with. So the structure of the building is something that is relevant to the audience I'm aiming. So that's what you see, that the building are looking like a Nigerian kind of building. So once I got everything right, what I'm doing now is just to position the buildings to how I want them to be structured. So that's what you can see me doing here. So just to put the buildings in the proper perspective and then, be able to make sure that they are forming the shape of the cross. So after I was done, what I did next was to add a levels curve. So if you have not seen this part before, you can watch one of the tutorials which we released last that covers how you can be able to paint your lights, paint your highlights. So in that part, we covered how you can be able to paint those lights in an easy way. So you can watch that tutorial that will put you through on step by step on how you can be able to do this and lighting in your designs, proper lighting of your design. So, and what I did next was just to find an image of Jesus and then just to depict the image of Jesus and then have him at the center just as we drew earlier. So I want him to be at the center of the design. So what I'm doing next here is to add a bit of the red to the structure. So what I did here was to group together my buildings and make them as one at the upper part of the design. Then I went to color range and then went to image selection. So I picked the lighter parts of the building so that I can be able to pick the highlights. So I don't want to paint the lights one after the other. So what I did was just to pick out the highlights and then make a solid color, and then the highlight that I've already picked, added the color to it. So that's what you see here, that I added the mask of the selection into the solid so that I can be able to make use of the highlight to show the reflection of the red on the building. So, and then what I did next was to go into my blend if. So if you double click on your layer, it's going to bring out the option of the blend if, and then you can drag the slider so that it's not affecting so much of the building. So that's initially what I did here. So what I wanted to do next now is just to add highlights to the buildings so that we can have highlights on the buildings as well. So in order to make this faster, so what I did here was to make selection of the building, which I already marked as one, and then edit the layer. And then I went to select, I went to contract, and then I put a little digit so that I can be able to have selection of the inner parts of the building. So, and then I added a solid color and masked out. I didn't even mask out. So I added the solid color and then took my brush and then started to paint the edges. So in such a way, if I'm supposed to paint this manually, it's going to take a longer time. That's why I make use of the shortcut to just get the selections of the edges all around and then painted the red. So if you can see the difference now, so it's just to have that little glow on the edges. So that is initially what I did there. So what I want to do next is to paint the highlights for the figure of Jesus. So what I did next is to add a curve layer above the layer of Jesus. So once I had that, and then I maxed it into the image of Jesus. So what I started doing next is to take my brush, switch the both to white, switch my background color so that I can be able to paint the areas at which I want the lights to affect. So if you have not seen the last tutorial, which was released on painting your highlights, I would recommend that. I'll also be pinning it to the top of the video, so you can just click on it to watch that. So this is just what I'm just trying to do, so you understand better when you watch the tutorial. So I'm just here painting the areas I want the light to affect. Of course, if Jesus is looking up, then the faces are going to be much more affected with the lights. So you have to understand that part. So this is just me painting the clothes as well. So it doesn't just look flat. So just painting the drapes on the clothes. So once you have that and then you have everything ready, just make sure that you are being realistic towards the pose of the clothes are, and then once you are done, then you can be able to fine tune it to what you initially want, depending on where the light is facing. So what I did next was to add a solid color above the light which I painted. So the aim here is just to have the light to be much more intense. Now that I have had my shading done properly, painted my highlights, so what I wanted to do now is to make the areas where the lights fell to be much more intense. So this is where I changed the blend mode to overlay. So I first used white, then I figured out I want to keep it as much more minimalist as possible. So I just changed the color to red. So you can just change the color from the initial white, then change the color to a red color so it blends well with what we already have. So I also find out that the light on our building is looking too much. Its blend diff was looking too much, so I just go back into that part and then painted out and to reduce a bit and then make the reds to be much more intense. So what I did here is to add my grain overlay. So you can always get your any grain overlay that you want to use online, but I already have an action which I have. So, and also I downloaded another background overlay online. So you can always get all this sort of background overlay on Pinterest. So I got this on Pinterest just to add a bit of texture to the design and then change the blend mode to fit into what I wanted it for. I brought it down to under the grain so that the grain can also affect it. So after playing with the different blend modes, I finally settled with difference. So the difference just worked perfectly for me for this case. So I started playing around with the glow. I wanted to have that divinity glow on the top of Jesus' head. So that's what I'm trying to find, what would be much more suitable. So I later settled with just having my brush to just add a touch of that glow behind him. So once I added it, I just took it behind him to have it below his head. So, and also I like converting my object to and my shapes to smart objects. So reason being that if I want to make any changes to them, I can be able to do so when I need them. So another thing I wanted to do is to have that radiating glow on the circle as well. So instead of choosing just the glow, you have the glow options, but I just thought of, let me make a duplicate after converting to smart object. Let me make a duplicate and then just blow out the second one instead. So, and then once I added the and filled blur, so you notice that we have that noisy blurred feel to it. So it's because of the grain overlay that is at the top that is adding such feel to the glow. So that's what you can see, that it's having that grainy feel to it. So it's because of the overlay, the grain overlay that is at the top. So what I did next was to add my cloud background and then find a blend mode that works. I found out that the subtract works just fine with what I needed it for. So I just changed the opacity so that it does not become too much. So I added a levels adjustment as well to just make everything to come together. So I also added a color balance at the top of the design so that we can just add a little bit of red to just composite both the image and then the background to everything to make them as a whole. What I did now was just to start adding my text to the design. So this is one thing that you have to also make sure that you are getting them right. First thing is that the places that you put your typography matters a lot in your design. So you have to find the best place, the best position that fits the typography that you want to put in your design. So what I did was just to find the part that I find which has much more contrast in order to place my text so that you can be able to easily read the text without having too many things getting your attention. So behold, I started adding the main text, which is the main headline. Behold, it comes with clouds. So that is the major text I want to be able to use as my headline. So that's why you have that at the left hand side. Then I added the Bible verse, which is Revelation 1:7, to the top of the design. So once I did that, change my text to red. So don't forget that we are working with red so that I can be able to connect all the messages together. What I did there was just to go into my blend if. Again, just double click on your layer, go to the blend if, and then drag out the darker part of it, hold your alt and drag it out so that I can be able to have the blend of your text with the image which is overlapped on. So I believe with all this now, if you've reached to this point, if you've watched the tutorial to this point, I believe you can be able to create this yourself and also understand what it takes to be able to come up with such an idea and also how you can be able to implement them. So this will be all for now. If you have not yet subscribed to the channel, please make sure you do. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and also stay tuned for more tutorials. Thank you for joining in. See you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.